Hello, my lovely tribe and Broke Women group. This is part 2 of the psychology of money that we talked about yesterday. As promised, I am back live so I can tell you all about the second half of the book. And I hope some of you can join me live. And for the ones that cannot, I do hope you have a chance to watch the videos because this is a really, really good book. And if you like reading books about money, I would strongly recommend it. And if you don't like reading books about money, please watch the lives because I'm telling you all the goodies about this book. All right, so lesson 11 in the book is reasonable to rational. This is a very interesting point and very valid. And what the author says here is that people, when they make money decisions, they don't make it based on the logical reasons or the rational. They make their decisions based on what's reasonable to them at that time. So, for instance, when you make a money decision to put your investments in the market, you're not going to decide to do that because all the charts and all the statistics show you that you should. You're going to put your money somewhere where you can still sleep at night, where you don't wake up because, oh my God, I lost $1,000, or oh my God, I lost 10% of my money. So whatever lets you sleep at night, that's what you're going to decide to invest your money in. And if you don't want to lose money, then you'll find investments that don't lose money or have a very minimal chance of losing. And if you don't mind it because you realize that the market will eventually go up, then you find investments that may lose some, but the potential to gain is a lot higher. And again, my disclaimer from yesterday is that this is not an investment advice. It's just information on how people make decisions when it comes to their money. So I'm not telling you what to decide. I'm just giving you some food for thought. So that way, when you make those decisions, you take certain things into consideration. Like, for instance, the decision to invest in stocks versus bonds or vice versa is not based on how they perform. It's more based on the risk tolerance, on what people can take, on what is not going to give the person a heart attack, what is going to allow them to feel okay and to feel safe and not to stress over the family's future. All right, lesson 12. Surprise! Now, this talks about the unexpected. And this lesson is about how the paradox of looking at history, trying to predict what's coming up, influences people's decisions. So when you're thinking of, okay, this happened in the past, therefore I need to prepare because it may happen in the future, one thing that a lot of people don't take into account is the fact that just because it happened in the past, it doesn't mean it will ever happen. And also the fact that a lot of the events in the past were triggered by things that happened that weren't expected to happen. Like, for instance, when the market crashed and it triggered the Great Depression, the market hadn't crashed. The people didn't know what was that to crash by 90% or whatever that October day. So that was a surprise. That wasn't something that could have been predicted. When the planes crashed into the towers on September 11, people couldn't predict that it was going to trigger the market crashing, the tech bubble bursting, the later the housing crisis with the mortgage bubble bursting and all that. But it did trigger that. So one event that is unexpected triggers a series of events that will impact different areas of your life. And that is the point in lesson 12. And I want to share something with you that may surprise you a little bit, or you may want to know and it may make you feel better because we're living in these times now when things are a lot better than they used to be from an economic standpoint and from a money standpoint. So this here, I know it looks really strange, but this is a graphic of the US economy in recession. And all the black lines are the recessions that happened between 1854 and 2004. It goes for 150 years. What you can see here is that the recession times were longer and they were closer together. So recession happened a lot more often before than it does now. See, the lines are thinner, so the recessions are shorter, and they're more spaced out, so they're further apart. So that may make you feel better. Sorry. All right. Lesson 13. Room for error. Whatever decisions you make when it comes to your money, leave some room for error. When you put money in an investment that you're not sure about, make sure that that's money you can afford to lose. When you expect something to go well, make sure you have a little bit of a cushion just in case it doesn't. So always leave room for error. Okay. The example that the chapter starts with is the Vegas casinos, right? When you play blackjack, you calculate your risk. So it's the same when you put the money in the market. Well, you know more about the market. It's not really just chance, but just leave room for error. Just consider what happens if it doesn't go as well as you think it will. All right. Lesson 14. You'll change. So when you make money decisions now for the future, like let's say you want to save $1 million. That's what we were talking about yesterday. And you say, okay, when I make $1 million, I'm going to be able to do whatever I want. I'm going to be able to live wherever I want or travel or whatever. Okay, great. But some years from now, when you get to that $1 million, that might not be what you want to do. So again, leave room for error and leave room for change. Because your ideas, your preferences, your hobbies, things that you want to have in your life or the way you want to live will change in time. So always take that into account. Whatever your goals are right now, you know that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, that whole picture will look different. So the author suggests that you avoid extreme ends of financial planning and also come to accept the reality of our changing minds. We change our minds, right? It's a woman's prerogative. That's what generations before came up with, and we still remember that nowadays. All right, lesson 15. Nothing is free. How about that? Everything has a price, and not all prices appear on labels. And the example is when people want to day trade, right? And they think, okay, I'm going to buy the stock and I'm going to sell it in 5 minutes or in 2 hours or at the end of the day. I want to buy it here. I want to sell it here. Well, there's a price in that. And the price is you may not be able to sell it here. You may sell it here and you still make some money, but you may sell it here if you have to sell that day. So when you're deciding what to do with your money, take into account the fact that that everything has a price. And the price can be in money or it can be in time. When you know that your money is going to stay there for a period of time, let's say 10 years, 20 years, 30 years until you retire, that the price you have to pay for the money to stay there is the fact that you can't touch it during the whole time. So there's a price. So are you willing to do that in order for your money to grow? Or do you know you're going to have to get it out fast and then that's not where it should go? So always consider the price. Always consider what you have to give up in order to get whatever the gain is that you think that investment or that action will bring to you. Chapter 16 talks about you and me. So all of this general information, all of these stories about different people in other fields that influenced financials, or people in the financial industry that we all look up to, like Warren Buffett, John Bogle. All of that is nice and good, and it makes you think of some things. But what happens when it comes down to you and me? Well, you have to, first of all, when you make money decisions, consider what your goal is. And lesson 16 talks about not going the way that other people go, just thinking that's the right path for you, because their goals might be different from your goal. And the examples in that chapter are about the housing, about buying houses, right? If an investor wants to buy a house to flip it, fix it up and sell it for more, that investor is going to look for a house that is priced low, and he wants the price to go up. But if you're looking, and he wants the price to go up really fast, but you're looking for if you're looking for a house that you want to live in for 20, 30 years, that same house may not be the best choice for you, because that house, the value of the house may not go up the way that you think. It may be in a bad neighborhood, or something may be wrong with it, and it takes more of your money to fix it than you think. So you always have to think about what your goal is when you make that investment, right? The same with stock. Somebody that wants to buy stock short term wants the price to go up that day or within the couple of days that they want to sell it. Whereas if you're investing for the long term, you don't want the price to be like a yo-yo, because then when time comes for you to sell many years down the road, the price may not be what you want it to be if it's like this all the time. So you want a stock that steadily goes up but doesn't fluctuate all the time like that. Okay, so don't follow the people that have a different timeline than you do. And also keep in mind what your risk tolerance is, and don't compare it to theirs. So if people buy a stock that has potential to skyrocket within a short period of time, but you know that you can't sleep at night if you lose half of your money, then you don't want to be in that stock, because that stock could lose half of the money overnight. Okay, and the other example in this lesson are the bubbles that happen, right? When somebody wanted to drive the stock high to sell it immediately, so they bought a lot, then the bubble burst because everybody started selling at the same time. But the problem wasn't for those people that were looking at a short-term investment, or at least not in the beginning. The real problem was for the people that wanted it long-term, because their investment didn't perform the way that they expected it to, because the bubble burst. Right? A lot of people lost their shirt on their back during the tech bubble. All right, chapter 17. This was an interesting chapter, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time on it because I want to share a couple of the stories that are in this chapter. And the chapter talks about how pessimism is very seductive. Right? We all know that if you watch the news, it tells you all the bad stuff, and people freak out, and then all sorts of things get triggered in the market and in other areas of the economy because of the things that people hear on the news. Well, this chapter explains why pessimism is so attractive to people, and optimism is considered really a bad thing or a scary thing, because people don't think it's going to be that good. So when you tell somebody that the sky is falling, they're going to run for shelter. If you tell everybody that the sun will be there tomorrow and it's going to be sunny and the next day is going to be the same, they think, oh yeah, you're joking, or you're not true, or you're not right, or you don't know what you're talking about, right? So people get more interested in hearing the bad news. And here's an example. So there's a a Russian professor. His name is, or was, Igor Panarin. And there was an article published in the Wall Street Journal on the front page about something this person said. And Igor said in the journal, Wall Street Journal, mind you, not this sensational newspaper that you find in the market. Okay, in the Wall Street Journal, Igor Panarin wrote, around the end of June 2010 or early July, the US will break into 6 pieces. With Alaska reverting to Russian control, California will form the nucleus of what he calls the Californian Republic and will be part of China or under Chinese influence. Texas will be the heart of the Texas Republic, a cluster of states that will go to Mexico or fall under Mexican influence. Washington, D.C. and New York will be part of an Atlantic America that may join the European Union. Canada will grab a group of northern states Professor Panarin calls the Central North American Republic. Hawaii, he suggests, will be a protectorate of Japan or China, and Alaska will be subsumed into Russia. Sounds funny, right? 11 years later, to hear that this was supposed to happen in 2010. Well, obviously, it didn't. But it created news and it stirred a lot of trouble and a lot of deep and very powerful feelings in people. Because it was published by the Wall Street Journal, so it must be true. On the other hand, Japan was very badly affected, right, by World War II. And after the end of the war, the Japanese economy was in shambles. But imagine if, whatever the Wall Street Journal version of the best Japanese financial newspaper is, had they said something along these lines, what would the Japanese have said? Not what Panarin said, but these lines that I'm going to say right now. So, what if the Japanese had published this article? Chin up, everybody. Within our lifetime, our economy would grow to almost 15 times the size it was before the end of the war. Our life expectancy will nearly double. Our stock market will produce returns like any country in history has rarely seen. We will go more than 40 years without ever seeing unemployment top 6%. We will become a world leader in electronic innovation and corporate managerial systems. Before long, we will be so rich that we will own some of the most prized real estate in the United States. Americans, by the way, will be our closest ally and will try to copy our economic insights. How about that? Had anybody said this to the Japanese people back in 1944, 45, even 1950, they probably would have been laughed out of the country, if not killed, for being so crazy, right? Yet, all of this stuff came to pass. So, it's not a good idea to listen to the doomsayers. Just take it with a huge grain of salt. Alright. The premise of the book, no one is crazy. So, just because some people believed what Panarin said doesn't make them crazy. It just means that their beliefs came to surface because of his words, and that's based on the things that were told to them growing up, the circumstances they lived through, so that triggered something in them. And just because people wouldn't have believed that fortune telling, let's say, about Japan, doesn't mean people were crazy. It just means, again, the premise was whatever circumstances and beliefs that they already had. And why does all of this talk about different things? Why do all these events influence money so much? If you're live, say hi to us so we know you're there. Okay, say hi and I'll say hi back. All right, well, why is money so important for people? Why does it trigger so many things in people? And why does it impact people's lives so much? Well, number one is that money is ubiquitous. So something bad happening tends to affect everyone and captures, hi Helena, and captures everyone's attention. So because money impacts our lives, and to such a great extent, whatever happens triggers something in us, right? Hi Wana. And the second reason is that pessimists often extrapolate present trends without accounting for how markets adapt. So people that predict the doom coming, the market crashing, the end of everything that we know in the economy, fail to take into account the fact that everything is adaptable. everything in the economy will adapt. And take COVID for example, right? Everybody was saying, oh, this is going to be so terrible, and I'm not understating it, it's bad. But everything adapted. Look how we're more online. We communicate with each other across bigger spaces more frequently, right? So we found ways to adapt, and the economy did as well. Yes, some industries are suffering because of COVID, but so many other things were born out of COVID. So that's the shift. The third reason why the impact is so big on our life is that progress happens too slowly to notice. So people don't really pay attention, but setbacks happen too quickly to be missed. So everybody sees it. And then everybody freaks out. Right? So the story about that is the story of the flight. When the Wright brothers started flying, people didn't really know that they were flying just a little bit until it happened when people saw them fly. But when an airplane crashes, everybody hears, and it's a big tragedy. Even though it doesn't happen very often, but it becomes such a huge thing that everybody knows about it. Okay. Lesson 18. When you'll believe anything. So, stories are more appealing than statistics, right? We remember stories better, which is good, but also when people talk about different stories, we generalize it. So, just what I said, right? An airplane crash, everybody thinks airplanes are unsafe. But in fact, statistically, they are the number one the number two. The number one are cruise ships. The number two safest means of transportation, right? Yet people are afraid to fly because once in a while, an airplane goes down. So, stories make people think that it happens more often than it does. Let's talk about the stories here. The example is really, really funny and cute. So it talks about, imagine if an alien came to Earth and this alien flew over the United States back in 2009. Imagine the alien would see people living in houses or apartments, right? They would see people going to work. They would see people eating dinner, going to restaurants, all of that. And if this alien would keep going above the different big cities all over the US for the next couple of years, this alien would have no idea that the country is in a big recession, which we had in 2009, because life keeps going. But when you're in it, it looks a lot more horrible than it is. Right? The more you want something to be true, keep this in mind, the more likely you are to believe a story that overestimates the odds of it being true. Right? So when we want something to happen and somebody says that, hey, this and this and this are signs that this is happening, then we're going to convince ourselves that the story is true. Right? Let's see what else we're talking about. Okay, another lesson under the 18th chapter says everyone has an incomplete view of the world, but we form a complete narrative to fill the pages. So even though we don't know everything, because we know this much, we figure out everything around it, so that way we think we have the big picture. Right? So whatever you think you know, take that with a grain of salt. Just think that that may not be the full picture. And I'll give you an example just to make you think about it. Think about an iceberg, right? Everybody knows the Titanic. Everybody knows that the reason why it went down is because it hit a piece of the iceberg that wasn't visible above water. So if you look at an iceberg from sea level, you see this piece of ice sticking up. But you don't see all this ice under the water right here. Right? But you think you have you think you have the entire picture because you see this piece that's above the sea level. right? So whenever you think of something, just wonder if you have the full picture, and maybe do some digging, do some research. All right, chapter 19, all together now. So let's think about our own psychology when it comes to money, right? And there are a few lessons that I will share with you. Go out of your way to find humility when things are going right, and forgiveness or compassion when they go wrong. That's very good. So I'm going to say it again. Go out of your way to find humility when things are going right, and forgiveness or compassion when they go wrong. Food for thought. Less ego, more wealth. Manage your money in a way that helps you sleep at night. I can't say that enough. If you want to do better as an investor, the single most powerful thing you can do is increase your time horizon. Become okay with a lot of things going wrong. You can be wrong half the time and still make a fortune. Remember we talked about the tails, right? About those outliers, about those things that perform better than everything else and give you the most of the results. Use money to gain control over your time. We were saying yesterday that the best return of investment is when you can do whatever you want, when you have time freedom. Be nicer and less flashy. Don't spend money on things that impress other people, because they're not going to look at you. They're going to wish they had those things. It doesn't do anything for your image. Save. Just save. You don't need a specific reason to save. Define the cost of success and be ready to pay it. Again, define the cost of success and be ready to pay it. Remember, a few lessons ago we said everything has a price. Nothing is free. Define the cost of success and be ready to pay it. I can't say that enough. Worship room for error. Understand that every single time there's a chance that something will go wrong. So make sure you have room for error. Avoid the extreme ends of financial decisions. Don't go too far this way or too far this way. And that's actually one of the things that I've always believed in. And I've been telling people, there's always better to stay in gray. Don't go white, don't go black, stay in the gray, because you're going to achieve more by staying in the middle. All the extremes are not in your favor. You should like risk because it pays off over time. Now, how much risk? It's entirely up to you, because that is based on your risk tolerance. Define the game you're playing. Are you here for a quick buck, or are you here for the long run? And respect the mess. Okay? Don't worry about things not going right all the time. Don't worry about what's wrong in this minute. Just keep working on it. Chapter 20 talks about what he does. So Morgan, the author, shares how he manages his own money, how his wife and him live a simple life that they're happy with. They have all they want to have, but they're not extravagant, and they save a lot. And he agrees that this may not work for everybody, but this works for them. So again, I can't emphasize that enough. Whatever decisions you make have to be right for you. It doesn't matter what your neighbor does. It doesn't matter what the person across the street does, or the person across the room, or the person 2 towns over. It matters whatever works for you, whatever is good for you, whatever makes you feel safe, whatever lets you sleep at night. That's how you base your decisions. And of course, whatever your goals are down the road. Right? So, again, it's a really good book. If you like to read, I would recommend it. Look at all my post-its. So, I'm glad that I was able to share it with you. I hope that you learned something today. Please leave me a comment with your favorite lesson or the one thing that you liked out of all the lessons I shared. Check out the other video if you haven't done so already. I will pin this to the top as an announcement, so that way it's easier to find. So if you watched a piece of it and you want to come and watch the rest, or if you're catching the replay and you can't spend the whole time to watch the entire video, then look for it in the announcements so you can find it easier. Okay, please take a look, take a listen, take notes if you like to, and most importantly, let me know what you think. Let me know if this helped you. Let me know if this triggered some thoughts that will help you understand your money better, because my mission is to help you ignite a love affair with your money. I want to help you have a better relationship with your money. I want to help you keep more of the money that you make and also make more so you can keep more. Okay, so with that said, I'll say bye for now. Thank you for joining me. And if you find value in what you're learning in this group, please bring a friend. We'd love to help her and we'd love to be able to help her as well.